Hello! Today, for the first homework of medieval imaginary class, I was thinking about a subject that was of great interest throughout history, meaning the vampires. We think that Bram Stoker was the father of the vampire fiction, but this history proved that this is not true. Because on the 1st of April, 1819, the Victorian physician John Polidori created the first novel that gave the start of the modern tradition of vampire fiction. The novel was called simply The Vampire, and it was a result of a contest where Polidori participated together with Mary Shelley, the creator of Frankenstein, and Lord Byron. At that time, Polidori was working for Lord Byron as his private physician, and he had already the opportunity to see the predatory side of Lord Byron's character, personality, especially towards women. And I think that inspired him this fiction novel, The Vampire, rapidly translated into many languages, which is still considered as by people who know as the basis of the modern vampire fiction. And today I would like to talk about an article from the list that we had for this course, which is called Vampires Rebirth, from monstrous undead creature to the sexy and romantic Byronic seducer in one ghost story. And in this article, I noticed three main ideas. One is from east to west. I think it's the first time in this novel that Polidori took the vampire out from the forest of the Eastern Europe and brought him to the west in the modern Victorian England. A second idea of the article is from peasant to aristocratic. Previously, the vampires was perceived as a peasant, but now Polidori made him look and behave in an aristocratic way. Also, we can notice in this article some sexual aspects of the modern vampire, who is now presented as a sexy male trying to put his bloody spell on beautiful women and bring them from mortality to immortality. Vampires were born in the tradition of Eastern European cultures. The Eastern people, I think, they had less national identity compared to the Occidental peers. They were the fruit of mixtures of many cultures, religions, and above all, superstitions. Before Polidori and his Lord Ruthven, the vampire was seen as a monster swollen with blood, who was either eating his own body in the grave, or, as we can see later in the history, sitting at the border between life and death by sucking their victims' blood. Eastern people were afraid of this unearthly undead creature and were fighting them through traditional tricks like garlic or crucifix. And those tricks would have made a modern Western European person laugh. In Polidori's novel, the vampire moved from the countryside and transformed himself from a peasant monster to the urban sexy seducer of women. From that moment on, from this transition that we mentioned earlier, the physically perfect vampire became became the symbol of masculinity. He was attracting women, seducing beautiful women like a magnet, women mainly from the polite society, sucking their blood and offering them an eternity. And now, after this article, I thought about another book which I read when I was like 10 or 11 years old. And it set my imagination on fire, like in many other people's case. In addition, because I am born and I'm coming from an Eastern European country, Romania, which actually covers Transylvania, the place where the action in this book take place, the root of vampirism, let's call it like this. I was even more curious to find out about vampires. And this book is called Dracula, of course, by Bram Stoker. As a child, I remember I was spending nights reading it. In this novel, Jonathan Harker, the young English lawyer, goes to Transylvania to meet a nobleman, Count Dracula, to do some real estate transactions. Already, in order to reach Dracula's castle, Jonathan went through difficult situations, like facing the fear of local people or having to fight angry wolves in the forest. After only a few days in Dracula's castle, Jonathan realizes that he is actually a prisoner, not a guest. And he was just a way for Dracula to get to move to the Western world. He managed to escape the castle, but Dracula also followed his diabolical ambitions and gets to England. And then he continued his diabolic masterpiece by attracting beautiful women, starting with Lucy, who was the best friend of Mina, Jonathan's wife. And gradually, as Lucy became vampire, she was supposed to make other victims, like children, even children, unless stopped by her fiancé with a stake through her heart, cut off her head, and a mouthful of garlic. Then Dracula continued his work, his diabolic work, with Mina, Jonathan's wife. As Mina slowly started to change into a vampire, the men found a way to send Dracula back to his country, to follow him across land and sea, and finally give him eternal peace and rest. What I notice in Bram Stoker novel is that we have in front of our eyes both East and West. As mentioned, the modern vampire is not Eastern anymore. He became part of the Romantic era England. Dracula is also determined to do this change, but the main motivation for him was revenge. In the opening chapter of the book, Dracula relates the proud but disappointing history of his family. Although he is still a lord in Transylvania, the world around him changed and grown significantly. And the glorious days of his people were gone. Now those glory days belonging to other people, other families, and other races. The Count lost to retrieve the power and conquest back his reputation. And he thought that by moving to London, he will manage to regain his family lost power. We can also notice the inferiority complex that Eastern European people may have compared to their Western peers. This complex is the result of multiple wars that occurred on their territory and that had a negative impact on their national identities, that even broke their glories and steal their fortunes. Whether Eastern European country, yeah, at least in the book, is still governed by superstition, by religious convictions. As soon as the novel shifts to England, we can notice the stamp of modernity. The whole of England seems willing to embrace the future and progress. But in order to fight the vampiric evil, the progress and modernity are not sufficient. And luckily, in the novel, there is a character that understands this. It's the doctor, Van Helsing, that he possessed not only the knowledge of the modern Western medicine, but also the great and precious knowledge of Eastern superstition and remedies. He managed to close the gap between these two worlds. And by his intention, by his knowledge, he helped the world get rid of this evil. We know that the stories of vampires have fascinated people from all over the world for at least, have been fascinating people for at least 500 centuries. But especially in the last 100 years, novelists, poets, filmmakers, playwrights, artists were obsessively attracted by vampires. And in each masterpiece related to the vampire world, they were trying to bring their touch of originality. Not only that contrasts are important, they are attractive, they are always subject to debate. But through the existence of the vampires, Victorian men also found a way to unleash their imagination, especially the sexual one. Because we know that there were a lot of frustrations during the Victorian age, a moment where women were seen either like devoted wives and mothers or like innocent pure virgin, and everything that was in the middle was not the real woman. Thank you very much for this occasion to discover the world of vampires a little bit more and see it through the eyes of an adult this time, through my past experience, personal and professional. And now I understand why some people, they are just called energetic vampires, people that we see them every day. Unfortunately, we still don't have a way to fight them, but we have to develop this within the resources within our side. Thank you and see you for the next novel, the next homework. Bye bye.